Okay, good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us. My name is Mike Dunn. Along with my colleague David Haas, we'll be presenting our webinar tonight, Navigating College Financial and Merit Aid. We'd encourage you throughout the presentation as we work through the materials to post your questions in the chat box. But we're going to try to get through the materials first, being mindful of your time, and hopefully leaving time at the end to catch up with your questions. So with that, we're going to get started. A little bit about our firm. Cirrus Financial Advisors was founded in 2015. We're located in Franklin Lakes, New Jersey. We're involved in comprehensive financial planning, but most of our work so far with clients has been in the areas of education planning, retirement planning, and investment management. We're an independent registered investment advisor, registered in the states of New Jersey and New York, although we work with clients in other states as well. As a small independent advisory firm, we are two advisors at present, David and myself. You can see our website there and our website for this topic this evening, collegemoneymatch.com. A little bit about David. He is the founder and president of Cirrus Financial Advisors. He is a career changer. So he started out as an electrical engineer and software engineer before going back to school for his MBA in finance and becoming a certified financial planner. He is the education director of our local industry association, the Financial Planning Association of New Jersey. Generally, he helps clients with retirement planning, college planning, and investment management. And in particular, with respect to college planning, he developed the College Money Match process and product to help parents make better college choices. And he put his own two children through college. Daughter went to Gettysburg and son went to Syracuse. Similarly, about myself, I joined Cirrus in 2018 after a long career in institutional finance, in banking, and alternative investments. I'm a member of the FPA-NJ as well, and the Digital Assets Council of Financial Professionals. So far, I've generally been helping clients with retirement planning and investment management, but my wife and I have managed to put our two daughters through not only college, but a couple of graduate schools, and one of them through medical school. Having said all of that, I think you in the audience are at an advantage today because there are things that we'll talk about tonight that David and I didn't know when we put our kids through college that would have been helpful. So here's our agenda for tonight. I'll be covering why college is so expensive and also walking through an overview of the needs-based financial aid. And then David will cover merit and scholarship aid, how families pay for college. He'll run through a case study of the Morris family, showcasing some results from our College Aid Pro software, and then David will wrap it up with talking about some upcoming changes to the FAFSA form. So let's get started with some perspective. Here is a slide that shows some of the larger ticket items that you're likely to encounter financially as you go through life. So starting on the left, we have buying a new car. That's CR-V hybrid that, well, it's not the same color, but David just bought one of those recently. Fairly big ticket item. And then we chose a recent price of a home in a nearby community here that's fairly reasonably priced for this area of Bergen County. A 3-bedroom, 1-bath house in Waldwick, New Jersey for a little over $400,000. What is almost comparable to that is the price of 4 years at NYU, one of the most expensive, if not the most expensive private university in the country, at nearly $340,000. Finally, for New Jersey residents, the price of 4 years at the College of New Jersey, formerly known as Trenton State, which is looks like quite a bargain compared to NYU, but still is a substantial number to talk about at a little over $150,000. So why is college so expensive? Well, we have a point of view. It's not because of the cost of the education. A recent study found that it costs $14,000 to educate a student at a public university. It's not because of highly paid administrators. Working at a university or college, with the exception of a few people, is not known as a path to riches necessarily. It's also not because of the great food, the new dorm, or the water park or lazy river that some campuses have installed to attract students. College is so expensive because some people are willing to pay that much. And those people, based on our experience, have included David and myself. Some good news, though. According to the National Association of College and University Business Officers, approximately 89% of students at private colleges got some kind of financial aid during the school year 2019 to 2020. So it might help to think about shopping for college somewhat akin to shopping for a big ticket item, like buying a car, buying airline tickets, or a large appliance or something like that. You can start out being shown a very high sticker price or listed cost. Then there are some coupons available to help you afford it, financial aid for needy families. And then maybe some dealer type incentives, perhaps some rebates, which we'll kind of refer to them as that. These are discounts for some, merit aid. Finally, allowing you to arrive at a net price. And if you've gone on plane trips, you'll know that if you talk to the person next to you, depending on whether they've got a connecting flight and what kind of ticket they bought, when they bought it, you and they may have paid a whole different price for the same trip to wherever you're going. So I'm going to talk about, I'll focus primarily on the coupons to help you afford it, the needs-based financial aid, which is mostly a formula-driven calculation that I'll talk about in a few minutes. What David will cover in a little while after that is the merit and scholarship aid, which, believe it or not, is based not only on the desirability to the school of particular students, but it also may depend on the desirability to the school of the students' parents. And just to put that in perspective, if a school knows that parents can afford to send their students there, the school will also understand that parents can afford to send their student to a competitor school. And as their job is to put students in seats, fill their freshman class, they may be incented to make some attractive offers to help that student and parent decide on sending that student to their school. So in looking at needs-based aid, how much you can afford to pay, the colleges have come up with a calculation that they call the expected family contribution. Their idea of what they think you can pay may be a whole lot different than what you think you can pay. But the expected family contribution is a formula. Generally speaking, colleges don't meet 100% of the financial need of families. And the way this is calculated is that you start with a college's cost of attendance, and then you subtract what the colleges have calculated as your expected family contribution. The difference between those two is considered to be your financial need. And for example, the Rochester Institute of Technology, RIT, the recent cost of attendance there was nearly $66,000 a year. And based on statistics that we've obtained, 87% of the need of the student body that goes there was met. So think about their cost of attendance minus expected family contribution. 87% of that difference is met by financial aid. And of that financial aid, 84% was met in the form of grants. Grants, of course, are the best form of financial aid because you don't have to pay them back. Financial aid, as you know, also will come in the form of loans and work-study programs. So applying for need-based financial aid, it can come from the federal government, state governments, as well as the school. And very importantly, you have to apply for need-based financial aid every year, not just one time in freshman year. So there are three financial aid calculation methods, or perhaps three different ways to calculate what the colleges think you can afford, or expected family contribution. The first is called the federal method. It's the most widely used method, used by most public colleges and universities and a few private ones. And they base this calculation on the information that you include in the FAFSA form, or the Free Application for Federal Student Aid. So let's say, for example, you've got a high school senior, just started senior year, fall of 2021. Looking ahead, they'll be entering college as freshmen in the fall of 2022. You'll need to apply by filling out the FAFSA actually quite soon. October 1st is the day that it becomes available. And the information that they ask you to include in that FAFSA is based on your 2019 income, particularly your 2019 income tax return. And the information will then be included in a formula to calculate your expected family contribution. And it's heavily weighted toward income and more lightly weighted toward a parent's assets. So kind of a sliding scale, depending on how much you make. The formula will take anywhere from almost a quarter to almost a half of the parent's income into consideration. If a student has income, $6,840 of that is protected, and then anything that the student has made above that amount, 50% counts toward an expected family contribution. And compare that with the parent's assets. Only between 5 and 6% of parents' assets are included in the formula. That includes 529 plans, but does not include things like the value of your home, the value of your retirement accounts, or if you own a small business with less than 100 employees. If students have assets in their own name, that's more heavily weighted, as the college assumes that the reason that student has money is that they're going to use it to pay for college. In a divorce situation, the college formula federal formula will only consider the income of the custodial parent. And that is not necessarily based on what the divorce agreement says. It's based on where the child spends most of their time in the household of the particular parent. And as you can imagine, with more children in college at the same time on the same income base, you would qualify naturally for more financial aid if you have more than one child in college at the same time. Let's move on now to the second method of calculating what colleges think you can afford, and this is the institutional method. This is used by a lot of private colleges and some very popular state schools, such as Michigan, Virginia, William & Mary, Arizona, and University of North Carolina. So they use information that you've provided in the FAFSA form, plus they ask you to fill out a CSS profile form. The CSS is the old college scholarship service that you may be familiar with. And the things that are considered in the institutional method are a bit more, let's call it stringent, in that they will look at the value of your home equity. That's the value of your house minus the mortgage debt that you have outstanding against it. They will look at parents' retirement assets. They will look at the value of a business that a parent might own if it's a small business with less than 100 employees. And if parents are divorced, they will still look at the income of both parents, regardless of custody. They also assume that a 529 plan will contribute more in the first year toward college. They'll look at 25% of that as compared to the 5 or 6% that the federal method uses. And colleges also have their own forms, kind of unique to them, and it depends on which college that you're talking about as to whether or not you'll need to provide more information. And the other tricky thing about the institutional method is that all of the colleges kind of make up their own formula of the ones that use it. So there's no single way to know how the EFC is going to be calculated until you actually choose the school that uses this method. And then finally, there is the consensus method of determining your expected family contribution. This is used by all the Ivy League schools and some other colleges, mostly private colleges. This method is kind of in between, I suppose, the institutional and the federal method in that they will look at home equity, but they will cap it. So if the value of your home is, minus any debt, exceeds 1.2 times your annual income, they will cap it at the 1.2 times annual income number. They are more lenient on 529 plans and assume that only 5% of it will be applied each year. But they still look at parents' retirement savings and annuities, and they will still consider the value of small business owned by the parents. So it's likely that your child may wind up or want to apply to schools, some of which will use any or all of the, well, they can't use all of the methods, but some schools will use the federal method, some will use institutional, and some will use the consensus method. And that'll all depend on what schools your child wants to apply to. So the forms of financial aid, need-based financial aid from the federal government, there are federal grants, Pell Grants, and supplemental educational opportunity grants. You can see the maximums there on the left side of the slide. There are state grants, institutional grants, which may come from the school itself or other private sources. We'll talk a little bit more later on about student loans. The best are the federal direct subsidized student loans, low interest rate, and the interest doesn't accrue until the student graduates. Second best are federal unsubsidized student loans. And then finally, there are aid programs like work-study. And interestingly, any amount that the student earns in a work-study program is not taxable income, but is considered tuition. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to David to talk about Merit Aid and take you through the rest of the presentation.
Great. Thank you, Mike, and hello, everybody. Welcome. So I'm going to talk about colleges' discount programs, which they call Merit Aid, but it's really a discount. Colleges provide discounts to some students, as we talked about. Colleges have demographic goals, and sometimes their discounts are related to those goals a lot of time. So colleges want students at the high end of their academic performance target. So if your student gets extremely good grades and high test scores, and you're able to apply to, for instance, a school that maybe is not quite as selective because the student likes it, you're likely to get very good aid. Colleges like students who are active contributors, leadership positions in clubs or activities, sports or music achievement, maybe nonprofit leadership, all the same kinds of things that help a student get into a good college also will help them get Merit Aid. And then colleges have demographic goals. So, if you're from South Dakota, I don't think there's anybody on the line from South Dakota, but if you have a student from South Dakota, that student is likelier to get a lot of money from the East Coast schools because the schools want the the geographic diversity. And then the major counts, what major the student is applying for. If you apply for a communications degree at an engineering school, so a liberal arts degree at an engineering school, you are possibly more likely to get money. So thinking outside the box sometimes can help. And then, of course, how interested are you? How many presentations did you go to at the college or webinars? The college keeps track of all of this. How many times did you visit the campus? That goes into your record, and it does matter for aid. So you can bargain, actually. Once you get into the college, you can bargain once you get your aid package. I was amazed with the students that I worked with last year, how much money they got in appeals. Now, I think that was because of the pandemic. The colleges are very concerned about, we're very concerned, maybe still are, about the pandemic. People are taking gap years. Colleges do depend on foreign students to fill their seats. So the one good thing to realize, it's kind of a buyer's market, especially when you're talking about colleges that aren't the absolute top tier academically. So it doesn't hurt. You can appeal. Usually appeals need to rely on new information. For instance, your student is in their senior year and they got some wonderful academic awards the college didn't know about in the original application. That can be a great reason to appeal for more merit aid. You also might be able to bargain a little bit comparing one college to another. So another fact about merit aid is that it's usually renewed automatically. So financial aid, the needs-based aid, you need to apply every year, as Mike said. But if you get a scholarship award, that award is good. You might have to keep a certain grade point average, maybe a 3.0 or better, but the aid will be renewed every year. So you need a budget ahead of time. You have to realize that college is a financial commitment. It's at least 4 years. Many students may not actually graduate within 4 years. This might be a little bit outdated. The 41% of students overall graduate within 4 years, and it also counts some non-traditional colleges. But this Rutgers figure is real. Rutgers, New Brunswick had a 64.7% four-year graduation rate a couple of years ago. I don't think it's changed too much. There are other schools that have graduation rates more in the 90 percentile range, so there is a mix there. You want to be careful in the way you pay for college. You really want to try to avoid, $100,000 plus of debt for the degree. The student will, and possibly the parents will be paying that for a long time. So the truth is, for many parents, many families, your student can simply not afford to go to college anywhere they want. So what I highly recommend is that parents sit down, figure out what their budget is per year for college, and then you tell your student before they apply. And they'll know how many loans they have to take, and that costs up and above what the parents can provide are up to them. So how do you pay for college? Well, you have the budget from the parent that we just talked about, maybe money from every paycheck. You might have money saved up. Maybe you used a 529 plan, which is a great way to save for college. And if you have a 529 plan, assume that you're going to use 25% of the funds each year. Maybe you're going to get grandparent help or other help from other relatives. It is beneficial to use that the last 2 years, because otherwise it's the college thinks that it's income. It's not taxable income. So if you're getting needs-based financial aid, it's important to realize that. And the only thing left after that is loans. And you could have loans for students and you can have loans for parents. We talked about some of them. Let's talk about more. The federal student loan, that's the federal direct student loan. The current interest rate is 3.734%. That rate is fixed. So if you were borrowing today, that's your rate, and that's the fixed rate of the loan through the life of the loan. There's a 1% approximately origination fee, which has to be paid up front. There are two types of federal direct student loans. There's the subsidized loan and the unsubsidized loan. So the subsidized loan, there's no interest. The interest is waived in school and 6 months thereafter. The unsubsidized loan, the interest accrues from day one, but you can defer it. You can either pay it up front or you can defer it. And in that case, it's just added onto the loan. There's maximum though, because the federal government doesn't want families to get in over their head. So there's really a maximum every year. Freshman year, it's $5,500. That could be either subsidized or unsubsidized loans, and then it goes up a little bit in subsequent years. They did recently tack on a fifth year. So overall, there's a maximum of $31,000. And the nice thing about these loans is that they're eligible for some income-driven repayment plans. If the student dies or becomes disabled, the loan is discharged. It's also eligible for some public service loan forgiveness. There's also a teacher loan forgiveness program. And anything that they're talking about in Congress about loan forgiveness, which I'm somewhat skeptical will happen, but if it does happen, these are the loans that they are talking about. Then there's federal Parent Plus loans. The federal government allows parents to borrow. These loans I would call somewhat steep. They especially have a very steep over 4% origination fee. The loans depend on the parent's credit score, not actually their income. So it's very easy to get into trouble by taking too many loans out. There's no maximum. They are eligible for an income-driven repayment plan if they are consolidated, which is a different type of loan. You can create a consolidation loan afterwards. It's a federal loan. But the income-driven repayment plan is not as good as the student loans. And it's also eligible for public service loan forgiveness. Again, if it's consolidated, that would be based on the parent's public service job, not the students. Federal loans, and actually all student loans, are often not discharged in bankruptcy. So you can't really get rid of these loans in bankruptcy unless you can prove that there's no hope whatsoever that the loan will ever be paid back. So something like disability will allow loans to be discharged, but just sort of getting into trouble and spending too much money and having to go, into bankruptcy, that will not necessarily get rid of your loans. And here are some other loans. New Jersey actually has some pretty nice student loans that you can get through the state. They're somewhat comparable to private student loans, but they can be a good option. They're available to New Jersey students who could be from out of state, or New Jersey families where the student goes out of state or in state to college. And these require a credit check and income verification. There are some income contingent repayment plans, and they have some different loan lengths. The 10-year loan is 2.99% right now. Then there are private student loans. Those rates vary. They can be fixed rate. They can be variable rate. There are many different lenders. For these, the student is the borrower, but they will need a cosigner because there's a credit check and income verification. So typically the parent, but a different relative could cosign the loan. Other terms can vary, and they can be dischargeable on death or disability depending on the lender. That's something I would look for if you're looking at private student loans, but they are not always dischargeable that way. And if they aren't, you should make sure that you actually have some life insurance on the student. Because if you're the cosigner for one of these loans and the student doesn't complete their education and gets a job and can't pay it back, you're paying it back. Many parents do use home equity, so they might borrow on their home to pay for their students' education. If you have a 401k plan that has over $100,000 in it, the rule is actually you can borrow $50,000 from the plan if the plan is with your current employer, and it is 50% of the balance up to $50,000. So if you have more than $100,000 in your plan, it means you can borrow $50,000. That's on the 401k plan. If you happen to have a 403b plan, I don't actually think it has the same provision. So college choice is extremely important. The more prestigious named colleges, they're going to give you fewer discounts. The Ivy League schools, Harvard, Yale, they actually don't give any merit scholarships at all. They do meet typically 100% of need if you have needs-based or you require needs-based aid. But for the other schools, more academic achievement, you get a better discount. You actually can predict both financial aid and merit aid. We have a tool that we provide our parents in College Money Match, but there is a calculator that every college is supposed to provide. Some of them are better than others. Our software is typically better than what you get from each college separately. Our information is based both on what the college provides as information and also on past awards. But it does vary from year to year and college to college. It's only a prediction. So, you know what happened last year with the coronavirus, and it did affect colleges, and I'm sure that very much affected how they parceled out their financial and merit aid. You need to think about applying to more target and safety schools. So often the guidance counselors, at least what they told us, is have your student apply to 2 safety schools, 2 target schools, 2 reach schools. This is academics. I would say, how about 3 safety schools, 3 targets, and 2 reach schools? From a financial point of view, you're going to get much better offers from the safety and target schools. If the student gets into the reach school, you have to be able to afford it because you're probably not going to get very much merit aid. The way you apply is also important. So early decision, my slide says early admission, but what I really mean is early decision, which is binding, is not a very good financial way of applying for college. Because it's binding, the college does not need to provide a good aid offer, and they often will not give you a good aid offer. So early action is wonderful. Rolling admissions is wonderful because it's not binding, so the school still has to give you a good aid offer, but I advise against early decision. And I already talked about, parents need to decide on that budget prior to the application. Don't surprise the student. Students don't. Your child is probably already all stressed out by the process, as I'm sure you are. You can't surprise them with the budget. So let's talk about a case study. We have Malcolm Morris. The parents are John and Esther. John makes $120,000 a year. Esther makes $25,000. They own a home. They have home equity of $250,000. They have $100,000 of savings and investments, and then they have $300,000 in their retirement accounts. And they have 2 children. Malcolm is a high school senior in this school year, and Anne is a junior. Malcolm is a smart kid. He's got a 3.95 GPA, and he took the ACT test and got a 34 on his ACT. And Malcolm wants to study English. So This is the output from our College Aid Pro tool that you get with College Money Match. I think this is very, very instructive. Malcolm applied to Gettysburg, where my daughter went, so I had to pick it. Marist, very popular with students from around here. Princeton, Rutgers, College of New Jersey, those are both public schools. University of Alabama, public school in a different state. University of Delaware, public school in a different state. University of Rochester, another private school. These are the cost of attendance. You will see that Gettysburg is the highest at $78,455, and Rutgers is the lowest, $35,351. So here is the EFC, the expected family contribution that's been calculated for Malcolm at each school. There's a letter after it, IFC. That's the institutional method, the federal method, and the consensus method. And at Gettysburg, the institutional method at Gettysburg says $36,000 is the expected family contribution. That's every year. The only other school, the University of Rochester, also uses the institutional method. Those can be different at different schools, but this family has a pretty simple financial picture that's more likely to be the same at every school. Then we have the schools that use the federal method, such as Marist. Now, Marist is a private college, but it does use the federal method. So that's $31,000. The feds set that methodology. It's going to be the same at every F school, every federal school. And then we have the need, which is the cost of attendance minus the expected family contribution. And you see that at the New Jersey public schools, because Malcolm lives in New Jersey, those are the lowest amount of need because the cost of attendance is so low. Next column is how much need is met at each school, and then what the percentage is that is met with grants. So I'm gonna kind of skip over here. The some schools will be providing needs-based grants based on the high amount of need, and then then the schools also might provide a merit scholarship. The way this actually works most years is that you either get one or the other, usually whichever is higher. So at Gettysburg, Malcolm would get a needs-based grant and actually wouldn't qualify for the merit scholarship, even though academically he would get it. So that's why his first year cost is $42,538. So it's the cost of attendance minus the needs-based grants. So if we look at the final first year net cost here, you'll see that the highest net cost is actually the University of Delaware, a public school. Why is that one so high? Well, that one's so high because, first of all, the University of Delaware is actually very expensive for out-of-state students. Many public universities are very expensive for out-of-state students. By the way, the exception is SUNY. SUNY is very well priced for the SUNY schools for New Jersey students. But the University of Delaware, which is very popular with New Jersey students, is not well priced. And then the University of Delaware doesn't actually meet that much of the need. So that's the reason why it's so high. University of Alabama. University of Alabama is the lowest. Why? Well, the original cost is a little bit lower. And then Malcolm is going to get a great merit scholarship. That might very well be because Malcolm is an out-of-state student and they'd love to have a New Jersey student at the University of Alabama. So, that's going to be the cheapest place for him to go if he chooses to go there. Let's finish up, and then I will take questions, or both of us will take questions afterwards. But let's talk a little bit about the FAFSA because it is changing. So Mike described for you how the needs-based aid works this year when you're applying this year. But remember, you have to apply every year. And they are changing it. Originally, they were going to change it for the 2023-2024 school year. Now they've pushed it off to the 2024-2025 school year. This was part of the CAA Act in 2021. So what are they doing? Well, goodbye EFC. Everybody hates it because it's expected family contribution, and of course, it's always much higher than you want it to be. So they're renaming it. They're going to call it the Student Aid Index. It's really the same thing. The lower the Student Aid Index, the more aid you get. It's very, very similar to the EFC. The FAFSA form is going to be much shorter. It's going to be 36 questions instead of 100. A lot of data will automatically be entered from the tax return. Right now, you can request that the data be entered automatically from the tax return, but now I think it's just going to be automatic, and I'm not sure if you can opt out. The questions are simpler. They haven't been released yet, or I haven't seen them, but it's quite likely that the questions will simply require more math to answer. For divorced or unmarried parents, and I saw Laura had talked about maybe we should just get a divorce, which I hope you don't do. The parent who provides the most financial support with these changes or the highest adjusted gross income is now going to be the one required to fill out the form. So that whole trick about the custodial parent and maybe if it's more or less equal custody, you choose the parent that doesn't have much income. Unfortunately, that's going away. You always have to choose the parent that has the most income. And then what is much worse, and I hope that this gets changed, is that the discount for multiple children in college is eliminated. So they're going to calculate your aid as if you only have one child in school every time, even if you have multiple kids in school. I've got a good friend who has quadruplets, and let me tell you, they just graduated from college. He would have been in serious trouble if his kids were going to school after this FAFSA change goes into place. I personally think they're going to change it back. This was a terrible idea, and constituents are going to be mad. But at the moment, that is the rule that's going to be instituted. There will be easier Pell Grant eligibility. So now parents making less than 175% of the poverty level will get the maximum grant, which was $6,495. Financial aid used to be barred if you had a drug-related conviction. That's going to go away. And then the lifetime limit, remember I said it was 5 years, but there are many non-traditional students who don't make it in 4 years or even 5 years because they have trouble paying. So now if your schooling takes longer, you can continue to get federal student loans. And you don't have to go full-time. You'll be able to get those loans if you go half-time or more. Another change is that the grandparents, if the grandparents provide money to your kids, it is no longer counted as untaxed income on the FAFSA, so that's good. And then there are some changes that are going to be implemented right away. So there's an elimination of a subsidized usage limit. I think that's for the loans. I actually don't recall right off the top of my head what that was for. There's the elimination of the drug conviction negative consequence. That's right away. And then there was a requirement for aid to make sure that the males in your family registered for selective service. I think there's still theoretically a requirement for selective service registration over 18, but the aid now no longer has anything to do with it. So here are some tips, some college financing tips. First of all, always fill out the FAFSA. CSS, maybe, but definitely always fill out the FAFSA. Merit aid might be better even if you don't qualify for needs-based aid. Remember, we were talking about how parents, the desirability of the parents also matter. Well, if they know that, as Mike said, that you might be able to go elsewhere, but also if they know they might be able to get some donations from you, they're going to give you more merit aid. So, it's not needs blind. The merit aid is not needs blind, unfortunately, and it works the reverse of the way it should. Also, the federal student loan, which is the best type of loan, that depends on the FAFSA. You want to fill it out. Even if you're not going to get any aid, you might want your student to get those loans. I also have heard, although I don't know this information firsthand, that if you don't apply for financial aid the first year, they will not let you apply in subsequent years. So if you think you might need it in subsequent years or might qualify for it, I would definitely recommend applying for it the first year. Also, there's a limited pool of money, so you should fill out those aid forms early. Obviously, they don't go to the schools really until the student applies, but get your students to apply as early as they can for the given school and get those financial aid forms in as well. Use federal student loans. They are excellent. So that should be your first go-to loan, the federal direct loans for the student. And then make sure that you look at your finances for all 4 years. So, if you're borrowing $40,000 in the first year, does that mean you're going to borrow $160,000 to go through all 4 years? And then maybe you're an English major and you're only going to make $40,000 a year on graduation. Actually, I just heard a story from a neighbor that their child graduated from college, a great college, got a job on the air at a TV station, and is not a full-time employee, even though they're on the air, and is on a 3-year contract that I think he's being paid no benefits, $35,000 a year. This is after paying for 4 years at a private university. That's terrible. You really need to think about that when you think about the debt. And here's another story. So this is heartwarming, but there's a lesson in here that I want to bring out. This high school student got a full ride at Harvard. So she got a needs-based aid award from Harvard. So she's going there, and then she got a $40,000 scholarship during her graduation ceremony, an outside scholarship. And she got written up in the newspaper because she decided to give that money to somebody else who needs help paying for community college. Very altruistic, and I'm sure she's a very nice girl. However, what they don't talk about in this article is the fact that Harvard and most schools are going to reduce your needs-based aid based on the outside scholarships you get. So if she took that $40,000, Harvard themselves would have removed $40,000 from her aid package and would have given it to another student. So she really didn't have a choice of using both, because that choice doesn't exist for her. So if you get needs-based aid, be kind of careful about outside scholarships. They might subtract from the aid you get. And the reason why I say might is that colleges give aid in the form of grants, loans, and work study. Some colleges will reduce the work study and the loans first. So in that case, that's great. But other colleges will reduce the grants first. In that case, that's bad. So be aware. Here are some resources. There is wonderful information in student aid on studentaid.gov. There is great information on finaid.org. Collegecost.ed.gov provides a lot of net cost information. College Raptor does as well. Not quite as good as the one that we have. New Jersey, there's good information here about the New Jersey programs. I went looking for New York loan programs, and I don't believe they have them. Of course, one wonderful thing New York has is the new Excelsior Scholarship, which if you make, as a family, less than $125,000 a year, you can go to SUNY schools for free in New York. I'm not 100% knowledgeable about all the details on that, but I think that's a great program that we do not have here in New Jersey. So we have written up a great guide to loans and tax benefits for college. But if you registered with us, we are going to send that to you anyway as a follow-up email. So, but I welcome you to contact us. I would love to show you, Mike or I, show you our college money match service, show you the software, see what it can do, and have us help you financially with the financial decision making for college for the this year or the next year or whenever your student is ready. And now I guess we'll take some questions. So I don't know, Mike, if you went through this.
While you were presenting, David, I attempted to answer some questions, but I'm not sure I knew everything. So one question is, does the state that the school is in have any effect on what type of EFC, which EFC calculation method they use? Or does it depend on whether the school is a public or private school?
Many public schools just use the federal method, but not all. Many private schools use the institutional method, but not all. So it has nothing to do with the state. It's just the college itself.
Okay. Another question, which I believe I answered, but how does the College Aid Pro software determine the EFC?
So for the federal method, so we're going to ask you the same questions that you get on the FAFSA and CSS forms. You're going to enter that information in College Aid Pro. You're also going to enter your student's grade information, test score information. And then we know the formulas that the colleges are using because they actually have to publish them. And that's how we do it. But it is just a forecast because we don't have all the factors, and they can vary, and sometimes the colleges surprise you. It is a buyer's market right now, I have to say. So the colleges have been more generous last year than I think they have been in the past.
Okay. Next
Hopefully I
question.
answered that.
Okay, well, I think you have. Um, and let us know in the chat if you still have further question on any of the things that we're attempting to address for you. Next question is, if I am retired and collecting a pension, is that income considered any differently than if I was working and earning a paycheck?
Not for the FAFSA, no. There's no difference in earned income versus unearned income versus pension income. Now, when you're looking at merit scholarships, it's certainly something that I would write. You know, if a student has a parent who's, you know, or parents who are older than normal and already retired, you know, for whatever reason, and money is tight, that's something I would certainly let the colleges know. Certainly, it could be a factor. It could be a factor. It certainly could be a factor for appeals.
Okay. Next is on 529s. If I have a 529 for each of my 3 children, is it my asset or my child's asset? And what I had replied was, it depends on who the owner of the account is. If it's the parent, if the parent is the owner, then it's the parent's asset. And then are all 3 accounts considered in the EFC calculation for every child, or is it one account per child considered? And the children are expected to overlap in attending college.
Okay. So actually, the 529 plan is a really weird account. And I was recently looking into this because somebody asked me a detailed question about it. So the 529 plan has an owner and a beneficiary. And the money is considered a gift to the beneficiary. So in some ways, it's owned by the beneficiary. So in this case, the student. For financial aid purposes, it's treated as owned by the parent. And if the 529 funds are not actually all used by one student, or you know, a student maybe gets a full scholarship, doesn't need it, you can change the beneficiary. If you change the beneficiary to another student, it's actually considered a gift from one beneficiary to the other, under tax law. So it's complicated. It's not simple. The student has no control over the 529. It doesn't matter what age the student is. The owner has control. The owner can change the beneficiary. The student can't do anything to stop it. Anyway, that was probably too complex an answer, but.
So you made a comment during the presentation about the reasonably priced SUNY schools for out-of-state residents. But you mentioned reasonable for New Jersey residents, and just wanted to clarify that they're reasonably priced for all out-of-state residents, as far as I know. I know people from Connecticut who also cited how reasonably priced they are, and we have a participant from Pennsylvania. They would be similarly reasonably priced for Pennsylvania residents.
Oh, yes. Right. I didn't mean to imply that differently. New Jersey colleges are very expensive, even for in-state students. So, you know, the SUNY schools look really good in comparison. And by the way, so the 529 account situation, that I think I didn't fully answer that question. Are all the accounts considered in EFC for every child? The answer is actually yes. But remember that typically financial aid is not an asset problem, it's an income problem, because the income counts much more. Parent assets only count at 5.64%. You know, income is 22% plus. if you're worried about the assets, chances are you don't qualify because of the income. That every situation is different, but that's that's what I usually see.
Right. But as David mentioned, also, I'll add that it still makes sense for you to fill out the FAFSA. When David and I were chatting prior to, when putting the presentation together, among the mistakes that each of us will admit to having made is that at the time we both had good paying jobs and did not fill out the FAFSA because we assumed we made too much money or wouldn't qualify for anything. And that, of course, was before we got involved more deeply into college planning and learned that we should have filled out the FAFSA each year because it might have opened some alternatives to us that we didn't know about. Next question. Well, Laura says she's going to have 3 in college in 2024, 2025. So, Laura, I'd encourage you to have another conversation with us.
Okay, Laura's my niece, so I think she's going to be talking to me.
Good. Sounds good. All right. Next question we have, do we know if the tuition tax credit is also going to be eliminated?
No, I don't know. They've been playing around with that particular tax credit over the years, and I have to say, I don't recall. I'm just looking at a tax sheet I have. I don't recall right now what the current status of it is. They often just sort of add it back at the last minute.
Mm-hmm.
It's popular. There are income limits on it, I believe, so not everybody can use it.
Right. Okay. And I think another question is being typed as we speak. Okay. I think that's it as far as the questions go.
Okay, well, thank you very much, everybody who attended. Please feel free to reach out to us. We'd love to talk with you, and demo or otherwise, any way that we can possibly help you. And we will be sending out that loan and tax benefit write-up to you, to your email, probably within a day or two, and we can send you a copy of the slides as well. So,
all right, there are a couple more things being typed. Let's just see what they are. Oh, looks like some thank yous. You're very welcome. Thank you for joining us this evening.
All right, you're welcome. I'm going to stop the recording.